2, 3, 4. Let me tell you about PuckPedia, stats, contracts, and caps. It's all there for you. One-stop shop for your hockey information. It's a hockey sensation. So log on, log on, log on. If you give a puck, go to PuckPedia.com.
Welcome to episode 24 of the PuckPedia Hockey Show. Today we have on Director of Analytics and Insights from Sportlogiq. It's Mike Kelly. If you have a television and you watch hockey, you've probably seen this guy on the TV screen. He does NHL Network, FanDuel Sports Network. He's done TSN, Sportsnet, TNT, Amazon Prime. He's been everywhere, breaking down all the data, the advanced stats that hockey fans are craving to hear about. So we talk about Mike's background and how he kind of got into this position with Sportlogiq, started more in a business development role and then evolved to more of that on-screen aspect. And then we talk about just the difference in the public and private expected goals model. I think that's the most common metric that people know in the advanced stats. And we break down what Sportlogiq has that maybe some of these public sites like a Money Puck or a Natural Stat Trick might be lacking a little bit on the inputs. And then we dive into some of the topical things that are happening in the NHL so far this season. We talk about the New York Islanders and Ilya Sorokin and how he's having an incredible year with this metric called Goalie Steals. And we get Mike to break that down for us a little bit more. And then we also talk about Connor McDavid and how he has, the most 22 plus mile an hour speed bursts compared to anyone else in the NHL. And it's not even particularly close. And then we wrap up talking about some puck battles and what that metric means to some of these NHL teams. And then who he thinks can dethrone potentially the Colorado Avalanche as the cream of the crop in the NHL. So without further ado, let's drop the puck. We now welcome on a very special guest to the PuckPedia Hockey Show. If you watch any sort of hockey on television, you've probably seen this guy. He does most of his time on NHL Network and the local regional FanDuel Sports Networks, but he's also been on TNT, Amazon Prime, Sportsnet, TSN. Hopefully I captured them all. It is Mike Kelly, Director of Analytics and Insights from Sportlogiq. Mike, how's it going today?
And the PuckPedia Hockey Show. Let's update the resume. Good, Keith. Good to catch up with you, man.
Yeah, love catching up, love talking hockey, and we will dive into all the data, the analytics, everything that you kind of focus on and talk about in your TV hits. But before we get things going here, I did want to talk about just how you kind of got into like this hockey and this analytics space. It's been a big kind of shift in how the numbers are viewed in hockey over the last, let's call it 10 years or so. So how are you kind of on the forefront of that? And then, joining a company like Sportlogiq, who we know was just recently acquired yesterday by Teamworks, but then also evolving that into like your TV and your media hits as well.
Yeah, it kind of came full circle for me in a way. Like I started through college in communications and broadcasting was kind of a focus there, and started in the media business originally, and always had a real interest in statistics and data, kind of driven insights and those kind of things. So I used that while I was doing the work that I was doing in television in the beginning. Kind of became so enamored with it and really thought there was such a future there that started making some connections in that space. And Sportlogiq was a company that I really believed in the technology that they had. I believed in the ability they would have to scale in hockey, and joined them almost 10 years ago now. And they had a few teams at the time. We had one deal with a digital deal to do some writing for a company. And that was kind of it. So to be a part of that growth and kind of where it is today has been, one of the most rewarding things of my career.
Yeah, now, Sportlogiq has licenses with 31 NHL teams as part of like the big, marketing spin on it. I won't ask which team doesn't have Sportlogiq. I know that's a topic of conversation between some people on Twitter and just understanding. But also, too, like a lot of the media companies are now using the Sportlogiq data to explain things on television. Like I know the bigger companies like the larger national media, but even someone who watches MSG Sportsnet and a guy like Bryce Salvador who's talking about zone entries and offensive zone possession time and things like that. That's really evolved, I guess, the casual fans' understanding of the game of hockey.
Yeah, it has. And that's been a cool part of this for me, is working with people in the game, ex-players or coaches or current players, coaches, managers, whatever, scouts, because I have so much to learn from them. And, I'll get people that will ask me things and I can give them my view on things or what, the numbers might suggest. But that kind of symbiotic relationship has been so much fun, where you use Bryce as an example. Like, Bryce is really interested in this stuff, and he was a captain of the Devils, played in the league a long time, like knows his stuff as it is. But he's somebody that understands, like, if I know this side of it too, maybe I don't have to agree with all of it. Maybe I don't have to use all of it, whatever. But you can incorporate that into what you do. And like, I don't know, for me, it's always like, here's the pie, right? Here's 100% of the pie. I might know X amount. A player might know X amount. Nobody knows 100% of it. So why don't we help each other fill it in as much as we can, right? And those conversations are always fascinating. Like, there's always stuff to learn from the other side. And, some people aren't open-minded really about it, and they don't want to talk to people in the game, and people in the game don't want to talk to people who use numbers. I've always just found it's such a benefit when you do it.
Exactly. Like you mentioned, right? The analytics is just one piece of this larger pie. Like, there's the whole scouting angle and the people who have been watching hockey for 10, 20, 30 years, who have played at such a high level that see the game a lot differently than the average person can, or someone who's reading a spreadsheet. And there's context to every single metric. Also fully understanding that these models don't necessarily incorporate 100% of the information, because if they did, people would just use these as the Bible, and everyone will be sick at drafting and make, shrewd trades and free agent maneuvers. And you're just not seeing that around the league. So it's just one piece of the pie that kind of adds up to the whole larger scale.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if somebody tells you that they've got all the answers, I'd be pretty skeptical. But the smartest people I know are always the people who are asking the questions, right? And you need to believe in yourself, your ability, your experience, and all those things. But this is why I love the job. It's like endlessly fascinating, because I never have all the answers, and I never will. But you can always just try to learn as much as you can and problem solve as much as you can. And, that's the fun part for me.
Exactly. And I think your analysis has kind of brought the next level of just watching these hockey broadcasts and incorporating these advanced stats into the larger kind of context and the traditional box score stats that you're seeing just over the last, handful of years. And so for you, like, at what point when you were working with Sportlogiq, did you really want to evolve kind of your role to be more like on screen and really explaining these complicated stats at a toned down level to the audience, so that they can understand it and incorporate it into like how they view their favorite teams?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not going to say it like happened by accident, but it was pretty organic. My role before joining Sportlogiq, I worked at TSN as when I left there, I was a Sports Center anchor, so I was used to doing TV stuff. I joined Sportlogiq originally in more of like a business development kind of role. It wasn't anything to do with using the stuff in media. Given my background, though, I kind of told them, I'm like, I think there's an appetite for this for fans, and I think that there's a business here to sell this type of information to the people who talk about the game professionally. And look, there were obviously hurdles to overcome. An answer you would hear often in the beginning is like, why do we need this? I don't get it. I've always given fans a lot of credit for being pretty smart. And I don't think we need to really dumb things down that much for them. Like, I'm not going to go on a broadcast and get into the nitty gritty about,
talk about the model inputs and like the decision trees and the, XG boost stuff. Like, you're not going to go that crazy.
No. And, an important thing to know is like, you also, if you're doing a game, like, you don't have time to even explain a model really. So it has to be like, I'll always take something, if let's say we're talking about, a team X, and team X is the best at this really important thing driven by a model. Well, if a couple layers into that model, I can get to an input that fans kind of know, and they're first in that, I'll use that. It might not be the truest form, like, you understand, but you can't lose the fan, or else, as great as your analysis might be, it's kind of worthless if everyone's just like, no, I don't get that. So anyways, to get back to your question, we started, using this stuff in media. I think with my background, I was able to really simplify it for the different people we work with, because I understand the pain points of producing television. And give it to them in a really simple way, understanding that it can't be that complicated, that you need to reach. Like, I've never done anything with the belief of like, my target audience is the analytics community or analytics, loving people. It's always, It's a hockey fan, and I hope they can all get it. Sometimes I go a little into the weeds and crazy just because I feel like it, whatever, but that's what my Twitter account's for. But but it was really cool over the years to see the adoption of, the people that use this stuff now in media, and really starting to understand it, and then really starting to be able to use the information well themselves, where we can be pretty hands off and they know what they're doing and how to do it. Look, hockey in the last 10 years and still has a lot of room to grow in terms of presenting the best information. Like I still see all the time, we're out shooting them 38-20. I can't believe our team's not winning. It's like, well, yeah, if you dig a little deeper, there's a reason your team's losing this game. So,
Right.
we're
Like
still
the
pushing.
quality is not there, or like they're
Yeah.
just, the zone time isn't where it needs to be, and the shots are coming from the point, just like in non-dangerous areas, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, before I even look at shot totals in a game, if I'm just going through a post-game report, the things that I've kind of created for myself, total shots are like not in the top 5 things I'm looking at to determine who won the game, who should have won the game. It's important to a degree, obviously, but yeah, that's still a big one out there that gets, I would say, misrepresented quite often.
Yeah, and then a question I have too, which is something that kind of spurred my mind here, is like for the teams that you do work with, I guess like generally speaking, we don't have to obviously get into the specifics, but like what aspects of like your data is something that they're like really kind of diving into, and that they like that maybe they aren't able to kind of get on their own, either from like the NHL API or any of the other vendors that are out there. Like what is kind of separating Sportlogiq apart from some of the other companies?
Well, we have a lot of proprietary metrics that you wouldn't be able to get in other places, even other, kind of similar type companies. I think that is obviously a huge value add. Teams now are obviously a lot more sophisticated than they had been in the past in terms of just building out, first of all, having a dedicated person, building out an analytics department, which most have. Like you go back, I'll just use 10 years again, because that's when I got started. There were teams that didn't have dedicated people to this type of work. Everybody uses it now in varying capacities. So the work's become, pretty advanced. I know a lot of teams are taking in, obviously, information, not just data, not just analytics, but information from a lot of different places and aggregating it into, a hub that everyone within the organization can use. And for us and what we do, we're a part of that. And I know there's great value there. The types of, the ways that they might use it, it really varies from club to club. But I'll just say it's gotten a lot more sophisticated even in the last 5 years versus where it was when I started.
Yeah, and you even look at the different aspects that teams could be using this data, right? Like one area could just be totally focused on like the amateur draft and looking at all the different junior leagues and trying to project which players are going to be the best value and the most, best assets in the near future. But then you also have the day-to-day, right? Like looking at like in-game optimizations, making sure you're deploying players, looking at pre-scouts and post-scouting reports. And then there's also the trade and the free agent acquisition piece, like which players are undervalued, looking at the market, seeing maybe where we could find value in the free agent pool, or if not in the free agent pool, then the trade pool. So there's so many different areas within hockey that this data is super valuable for.
Yeah, you nailed it. Exactly. It's multi-department usage for sure. Scouts, pro scouting, amateur scouting, trades, free agent sign, drafting, all the things you mentioned, coaching. I still think in general, there's room to grow on I guess I'll say the coaching side of it, in terms of just how you can look at the game, the way that it's played, finding, efficiencies, areas that you can be 1% better in. And again, for every team in the league, there's the team that does that the best. There's the team that does it the worst, and everything in between, right? But there's so many applications for it. You're exactly right. It makes it obviously a very valuable and necessary tool. It's why, like you mentioned, almost every team in the league uses it. So that it's been a lot of fun kind of seeing it very early on and seeing the adoption of it to where it is today. And you know what? The best part is too, is like, I'll talk to people. I'll give you an example. Like I was talking to a coaching staff this past summer, and I had an idea that not many teams do. It's not wild, but I'm just like, wouldn't that be a better way to do it? And they thought, okay, that's interesting, but what about that? And you just have those back and forth. So there's room for subjectivity too, which is fun.
Exactly, and everyone kinda has a different opinion about how they approach things, and if they were all just reading the data as is, like, then, everyone would kinda have groupthink and think the same way, so it's good to have that, looking at the data, but then also, like, understanding their, like, vision for, like, the long term.
Yeah.
One thing I did wanna talk to you about before we kinda dive into some of the things that have been happening around the NHL this season is with the expected goals models just in general, like, that seems to be, I would say, the biggest advancement in the hockey analytics space that people are actively using on a daily basis. And I wanted to ask you, I was listening to 32 Thoughts, and Kyle Bukowskis was saying how if it wasn't termed expected goals, if he thinks it would have like a different application, just people necessarily may not like the way it's termed. But I wanted to ask you between like the private models and the public models, so like a natural stat trick or a money puck, or some of the other ones that have been posted evolving hockey as well, like what are kind of the major differences between your private models and your public models? And I think you've said before that like the end results are actually closer than you would think between the two, but it's more like all the inputs are different, and a lot of that probably has to do with the position of players, the goalie like positioning and how they're facing, but and some of the pre-shot movement. But talk to us about like the difference between the public and the private models in general.
Yeah, sure. I'll say, like, I agree with Kyle's point about the naming of things. I think that was a big barrier early in the days of analytics, where there were kind of these crazy names for things that didn't need to be, and that was a barrier.
Like Corsi and Fenwick.
Yeah, exactly. Like just their shot attempts. So the expected goals thing, like I agree with what he says in general, but also I think like what else are you going to call it? Like goal probability, you could call it.
Yeah.
I think that's a bit cleaner. But I still think when you're talking about something that's not, a shot on goal or a shot from the slot or a scoring chance off the rush that are very easily understood, when you get into any kind of modeling, people might just be, well, I don't know what is this, what is right. So I don't know that you ever really get over that, other than people eventually, people just understand the value of it because of it's the best way to look at what's going on in a game from a process standpoint. Anyways, what was your question? Public and private models. Yes, that's a good one. And I know it's had a lot of debate. This year's been really interesting too, because of the deviation that we've seen from expected goal models to kind of actual results in some areas that have been significant. The difference
I think
between,
some of the public models have been like retooling their models this
yeah,
year, like like around this time, like maybe a couple weeks ago, just because of how like different it was.
yeah. Well, so the NHL stat keeping has changed with the adoption of puck and player tracking, right? Of having chips in the pucks and in the player jerseys. So the stat keeping is different than it used to be. I would, outside looking in, say more accurate than it used to be. That has changed. So, like, if you're training a model on historical events, as you should,
Yeah.
I
It's
think
apples and oranges.
some of the trouble they found was that when you go beyond that, it starts to get wonky and it starts to mess the model up, right? So now you got to find the balance of, okay, we want to use data that we know is being collected the same way, but we also want to have a big enough sample to know that the model is going to be good. Our model, obviously, we make adjustments to our model as we go along as well, as the game changes. But the way that we track the game has been the same for many years.
Right.
So we can still
Computer
use,
vision, right?
yeah, so we can still have that historical data and know that it's tracked the same way. But we've found differences in the way the game's been played. It's funny you asked the question, because about a week or two ago, me and a colleague were looking into some of this stuff at a real kind of in-depth level of looking at our inputs, but also what's feeding those inputs and what changes there have been. And, in the public space, I know deflections were brought up. We noticed some differences in the location of a lot of deflections being closer to the net. And these are things that are going to, make a model look different than it has in the past. So that's why there's constant iteration on what goes into these things. And, in terms of just the differences in general, public and private, we have a lot more inputs to work with the proprietary data that we have, like pre-shot movement and angles to net and goalie, etc. There's more we
And
can
the
work
events
with.
you quantify too.
Yeah, the number of events we quantify, exactly. So there's more we can work with. I'll say this: the work done in the public space and building of these models, I've always been very impressed with. They just don't have the same level of data to create the same types of inputs. which is why there's a value obviously placed on a proprietary model.
Do you think that there's a world where the NHL allows the public space to have the ability to like use the player and puck tracking data to analyze, similar to like what MLB does with the Baseball Savant, where they have a lot of data that they're able to export? So like NHL Edge is kind of the starting point, it seems to there, but it's not quite where it needs to be yet to really get that in depth analysis for some of these things.
I hope so. In a lot of ways, hockey's still in an infancy stage in terms of where this is all going to go ultimately. Started later, technology's different. Like baseball's made for analytics. It starts and stops with the same event every time. Like hockey's different. It's a flow sport. So, but I hope so. Like you go on there and you can get some really cool information and it's interesting. The below 50th percentile stuff is frustrating if you're a fan because you're like that leaves half the league open to interpretation of where this guy may be.
Is he
And
49th percentile or first percentile? Like that's a huge
yeah,
discrepancy.
and the thing I always hear is like, well, we don't want to show that because it could be bad for like a contract negotiation for a player. Literally every case where it might hurt a player, it will help another. So what changes? Like it, and people can misrepresent information all the time. You don't need an analytics site for that. Like it can, anyway, my point is for a fan, if I'm a fan, I'm sitting there thinking, I want to see the other 50% here. So it's hard to do that when you compare, Baseball Savant to where Edge is, but Edge is early still, right? They've got more coming out. There's inherent challenges that you face when you build something like this. And I think for where they're at, they've done pretty well. But if I'm just sitting back as a fan, yeah, there's things that I want to see that you can't currently see.
100%. And that brings us to a good transition here. So let's talk about kind of the NHL this year and some things that are kind of catching your eye using that NHL Edge right there. So you posted something today before we kind of get into some of the cool Sportlogiq data that you're posting. But Connor McDavid's 22 plus mile an hour speed burst this year, almost like triple of what the second place person has had this year. What makes McDavid so special? And like, he's not like still a super young guy. Like he's, I think 29 years old now. So the fact that he's still doing it on this level and still has such outrageous speed is just really fascinating. And, look how it's played out this season. He has what, I think a ton of like 50 points in the last like 20 games. And he's on another point per game year already clinched.
Yeah, it must be nice, in January. I know it's crazy. Like what makes him different, it's not even that he's the fastest guy. Like I think he literally does have the fastest clock speed this year, according to Edge, but I don't know that he did last year. And guys like, Roope Hintz and Owen Tippett and Nathan McKinnon are all right there. But what he can do with the puck at the speed he goes at, no one's ever in the history of the game been able to do that. That's what makes him different. That he can process the game and has the physical tools to execute at that speed. No one can do it, right? Yeah. It'd be like, I don't know what the comparison is. Like a downhill skier and a slalom skier are very different skiers. Now imagine the downhill guy going 1,000,000 miles an hour, but also doing slalom and nailing it.
Right.
Like that, that doesn't happen. So yeah, he had, it said 92 speed bursts at 22 miles an hour or more. And the next guy was Hintz at 29. Like that's crazy. So, and the funny thing is at the start of the season, like the first kind of 6 weeks or so, Edmonton had another slow start. They always do. McDavid wasn't even leading the league in rush chances or even really near the top. And then he's exploded. And I honestly wonder, like, not that they're making a conscious decision, like, hey guys, we'll go out for a skate. We'll see you in November. But they played deep hockey for 3 years and you can't go 100 miles an hour for 82 games. Nobody does. I just wonder if it's like it took them a little while to get going, but man, they're all going now.
Yeah, and we're going to get 84 games next year, so even more games to add to the regular season in the future.
They're going to have to start looking, I think, like maybe not every guy, but I still think it's kind of crazy that, and we shouldn't go the basketball route with this, but that guys just play 82 games in this sport and 84 next year. Like, look at Matthews. He did not look anything like himself until post Christmas break. And I know it's only a couple days off. He looks like the 60 goal Matthews again.
No, that goal last night he scored was awesome.
Right. So like, again, not apples to apples for every player, but a guy like Matthews, who's had some kind of chronic nagging injuries in the last few years, like why would the expectation be to play 82 games? Maybe every few weeks you just take one off, give him a 3-day break. Look what the 3-day reset, unless I'm missing something and I don't have any knowledge of what went on in those days, but or it could be a coincidence, but man, he looks like a new player.
No, and it seems like this year there's a lot more injuries than other years due to the condensed schedule with the Olympics
Yeah.
coming up. And then one player we can talk about too, who was injured like last year and did get a little bit injured this year, but has bounced back, and he's honestly should be in the Hart conversation, and that's Ilya Sorokin. And one stat that you have that's really interesting is this goalie steals stat. So why don't you walk us through this a little bit and how you can like really use that to evaluate how a goaltender has performed this year?
Yeah, look, I like it just because, people talk about it all the time. Oh, the goalie stole that game. And you can kind of eye test it and get it, right? But you can measure it too. And this is one of the things I've loved about working at Sportlogiq is that we've created a lot of our own data points and just things that I think are interesting, meaningful. So a goalie steal, all right, the people Kyle was talking about are really going to be lost when I get into this, but a goalie steal is literally just the taking the goal saved above expected, which I can get into in a second. And is that number greater than the score differential? So basically, if their goalie saved you a goal and a half in this game relative to expected, and you won by a goal, he's the difference. He's the main reason, right? Yep. That's a goalie steal. So Sorokin is an example in the game against Edmonton. It was a 1-0 shutout win. He had
like what, over 4 goals saved above expected?
4.7 goals saved above expected. He stole the game. And he's done that 10 times this year, which is more than anybody. So just a way, again, some goalies don't have a lot of steals. Doesn't mean they're not great. Goalies on high scoring teams can play really well and rarely ever have to steal a game. So there's context that's important to understand with it as well. But Sorokin, it's just another tool to look at the importance that he has to his team, which is, I mean, my goodness, this is even crazier to me. 233 saves from the inner slot area, that net front prime real estate area, which is way more than any other goalie. He's played 8 fewer games than a lot of guys. That's how bad the Islanders
are probably crazy.
That's how bad the Islanders have been defensively, and how much of a hero he's been. If people talk about, if the Sharks get in, is Celebrini a Hart Trophy guy? If the Islanders get in, how is Sorokin not?
I know. And everyone wants to talk about Schaefer too, and rightfully so, right? Like no 18-year-old defenseman has done what he's doing, maybe ever, but like at least in the last 20, 30 years. But to your point, like Sorokin's almost definitely their most valuable player this season, even with how good Schaefer's been, and also like Bo Horvat up front too.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing, like Hart Trophy is not best player in the league. It is most valuable to your team. To the people that vote on it, the league has not asked for your interpretation of the award. It's a very simple and definitive explanation on how to do it. And I would urge people to do it that way. And it's hard to imagine, like Hellebuck won it last year, right? Sorokin is doing more for the Islanders this year than Hellebuck had to do for the Jets last year. Now, the Jets were the best team in the league. It's not like he's got them to that level. I'm just saying he's done more for this team than Hellebuck had to do last year, as brilliant as he was.
Yeah, and let's pivot a little bit here to Celebrini. I know you had mentioned him too. So I think he has over 71 points now on the season. And if you look at who's second on that team, it's like Wenberg with like maybe in the 30s, like not even remotely close. So like that's another reason why he's possibly a Hart Trophy candidate if San Jose makes it to the playoffs. What are some of the the under the hood stats that really make Celebrini such a special player?
It's a great question. His puck moving, chance generation, obviously, but defensive impact as well are all phenomenal. They were last year too. He's just taken it to another level. Moving the puck through the neutral zone, he's already one of the best. I sat down with him at the Combine right before he was drafted and talked to him about that. And he gave a really interesting answer. He credited one of his assistant coaches at BU for helping him improve on his entries. Because the way he can skate, he's going to get the opportunities. It's like, what do you do with them, and how to get to the middle of the ice and then attack from there, how to get the puck off the wall and get to the middle. There's so many things that he does so well. The defensive impact stuff, winning puck battles, good active defensive stick, etc. is already, like, people say Crosby light, right? I said that last year and was like, kind of, I don't know. I had people texting me like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, I don't mean he's going to be Sidney Crosby, and he's not going to be Sidney Crosby. But the elements of Crosby's overall game, that low center of gravity, power forward kind of stuff, is already there with him. And like Mike Rupp brought this up to me at NHL Network because Rupp was a Penguin and he knows these things. He's like, Sid had to work on those things to get to the level that he's at. Like Celebrini, I believe, is ahead of where Sid would have been at 19 in some of those areas, which is crazy. It's just, he seems like one of those guys where it's like, he could win a scoring title. He could win a Hart, all these things. Like, you're going to win with him. You're going to win in the playoffs with him.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing you did bring up too that I think is interesting is this puck battles. I was talking to an NHL GM a few weeks ago who was saying how puck battles is one of the things that they value the most when they're looking at guys through the amateur ranks and for the NHL draft is who's winning the puck battles, because scoring all is kind of relative and depends on which league you're in. And there's ways to quantify that. But they said puck battles remains pretty consistent throughout. So talk to us a little bit about puck battles and why you think that's kind of so important to a full all around player.
Well, it is. There's a lot of them in a game. It dictates obviously who ends up with the puck. It's a critical thing. I think, when you're talking to a GM about it, that's so true, because you get a bunch of guys that can shoot the lights out and score and put up points at the junior level when they're going to be drafted, high end guys. I think even more than that, he's probably looking like, where are the dogs at? Where are the guys that are hungry for the puck on the ice? And puck battles is part of that for sure, but there's other areas as well that can kind of get into that type of player, and those are separators. You could have two guys who are point of game guys. That's a separator. Talking to a coach this year and sat down, and I wanted to kind of look at that dog archetype. It's actually something I did in the off season, is create a player archetype for player competitiveness. Because of the value that people in the league, as you talk to a lot of people in the league, the value they place on it. And I did it. And the coach told me how much he valued puck battle, how much the team values it. So it's a huge thing. It's one of the things we track, one of the things I use in the analysis, I use in the media, largely because of how valuable people in the game have talked to me about this aspect of it, how valuable it is. Shocker, when I did the dog archetype, player competitiveness, Celebrini came out number 1 last year.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. Didn't expect that. Like Sam Bennett came out. It kind of all came from Sam Bennett and what he did in the playoffs. And I'm like, all right, he's not a point of game guy. He's not a superstar. He just won playoff MVP. He's exactly what you want in the playoffs. How do we capture that? Right.
And the Olympics too, or just the playoffs?
We don't know yet. Maybe he'll still get there. He should be there. That one surprised me for sure.
Yeah.
Good thing about Canada, though, baby, we can send any number of different types of teams and we'll probably still win gold. It's what we do.
I know. They said the same about the World Juniors, though.
Yeah, no, it's not like we haven't, pooped the pants in the Olympics in the past either. So nothing's a given. But yeah, it was like, how do you capture kind of what Bennett does? And Bennett was top 5 in this thing too. But yeah, when I saw Macklin was number 1, I was like, well,
that's shocking.
The great thing about models, though, and doing this kind of work, though, is that it's not to like pound your fist and say Macklin Celebrini's better than Sam Bennett at this. Like, it's just to say, okay, that guy's there. Let me dig a little more, right?
Exactly. Well, Mike, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for the time. Well, one final question here. It's our cool bet question. If you go to puckpedia.com, you can get /coolbet. You can get in on the action today. Stay cool and bet responsibly. Puckpedia.com/coolbet. So the Colorado Avalanche have been just an absolute wagon. They seem to be the class of the entire NHL this year. Is there any teams that you think have a chance of dethroning the Avalanche on the way to the Stanley Cup final in June, just based off some of the numbers and the way you're looking at things? Just this year, I mean, top to bottom, right? They have just such an elite forward group. Their D-core, I mean, the best D pair in the entire NHL. Nathan McKinnon's, going to be up for the Hart Trophy. In net, they have Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood, who have put up ridiculous numbers as well. So who's going to be able to compete and challenge with the Colorado Avalanche in the finals this year and in the playoffs?
You're right. They're the class of the league. Like, it's them and then a gap and then other teams. Nothing's a given. And if I look at, I'm looking at like when you get there, which teams are good, but also going like that. If you look at the body of work so far this year, like I almost throw it out. It's if Edmonton's playing to the best of their abilities, can they compete with Colorado in a conference final? Yeah, I think they could. If Tampa Bay gets to a cup final and they're healthy, can they compete with Colorado? Yeah, I think they could. I don't know that I would pick these teams to beat Colorado. I don't know how you could at this point. But yeah, I think Vegas, I think Edmonton, Minnesota could give them a big run. And I don't think Minnesota's done. What if they had another big piece at the trade deadline, right? So it won't
We
be.
saw the Rangers note go out today.
Yeah,
Panarin and Kaprizov share agents. Like a lot of speculation on that. That would totally change the dynamic of their team, which already the Quinn Hughes trade already did already.
yeah. Well, exactly. If they take another big swing, it'll be interesting. So yeah, look, Colorado's the favorite. Colorado's playing way better than anybody. Their A game is better than anybody else's. They don't get enough credit for how well they defend. They're so good. They're so deep. Like Brock Nelson. People last
40
year,
goal pace this year.
I know. Like last year, I did a thing for NHL Network saying like I think Brock Nelson should be on the Four Nations team, and that was a bit of an odd pick to some people, I think. And he's on the team, right? And then this year, there's still people who are like, how is Brock Nelson on the team? Like you need Robertson or Caulfield or whatever. These players are not apples to apples. Brock Nelson is not there to do what you would ask those guys to do, and he's there to be
Tough matchup minutes
very
on the
valuable
Colorado
piece.
Avalanche.
Yeah, well, exactly. You know it. So, anyways, all that to say, yeah, probably 4 or 5 teams I would say that could compete with them, but they're the best.
Yeah, they're truly incredible this year. We'll see how it plays out. But Mike, this was awesome. Thank you so much for the time. If you guys turn on your TV and hockey's on, you're probably going to see this guy's face breaking down the numbers, the analytics, and giving you some good insights that you're going to be able to take away for the future. So, Mike, thank you for the time. Any final words?
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. We've known each other a while. Always like chatting with you, and continued success.
PuckPedia.com.